Hi all, welcome to this new episode of my podcast, A Digital Tomorrow. Today, I'm joined by Takeshi Kito. Takeshi works as the Vice Chair of the FinTech Association of Japan, and he's also a member of the regulatory Sandbox of the government of Japan. So I'm very happy to host Takeshi today. Welcome to my show, Takeshi.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for having me today. And hi, everyone. I'm Takeshi Kito, and I'm very happy to talk with Japanese fintech ecosystem and introduce myself as well.
Well, it's actually going to be very exciting for me to host you, and not just because you are a great expert, which you are, but also because even though I've been covering many Asian or non-Asian countries in my podcast, covering their fintech scenes, their blockchain scenes, I couldn't yet cover Japan. And I'm very sorry about that because I'm very interested in Japan as well. So it's going to be great to let my listeners hear about Japan from the first time from you. So I think that without further ado, I would like to start by asking you if you could please share a bit more about your personal journey, especially when it comes to why or how you decided to join this new thriving fintech world.
Sure. Actually, as an undergrad and a graduate school at the University of Tokyo, I studied architecture, not a fintech, not a finance. But on the other hand, I worked at some international investment banks and private equity firms in Japan. And after my graduation, I started worked for Boston Consulting Group as a business consultant, and followed by investment banking division, Merrill Lynch in Japan. And during 5 years in Merrill Lynch, I found there are so many issues to be solved in terms of efficiency or inclusiveness. So that's why I decided to start my own business and try to solve these problems. So that's a brief history.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing your personal journey. And well, now I would like to discuss some more general topics related to the fintech scene in Japan. Well, we all know that Japan is one of the world's most important economies. It's a G7 country. But now I would like to dig deeper on its fintech scene, because well, Japan's fintech scene may be a bit unknown to some of my listeners who are not from Asia. So it's going to be great to shed some light to it. I think I'm going to start with a very general question. I would like to start by asking you, like, what do you think about Japan's fintech scene? Like, for example, what are its strengths and opportunities?
Okay. Japanese fintech scene was started 2014, so it's more than 7 years ago. And Japanese fintech is actually domestic, to be honest. So it's better or to worse. It's sometimes protected in terms of regulations or cultures or market practices. However, sometimes it's the problem. It has some problems for international companies who want to come to Japan, and also for Japanese fintech companies or financial institutions who want to go international. So the market is very unique, but it's has some opportunities and also have some problems.
And I mean, we all know that Japan is a very big country. Now it has over 120 million inhabitants. I mean, it encompasses like many islands, no, from the north to the south. I mean, Hokkaido, Honshu, Kyushu, Okinawa. I mean, it's a very big country, but
yeah,
well, I mean, it's a very like densely populated one, but big nonetheless, no. So we all know that, but at the same time, there is no doubt that well, Tokyo plays a huge role in Japan, not just because it is its capital and biggest city, but also when it comes to Japan's economy and also to Japan's fintech scene. So I wanted to ask you, like, what role does Tokyo play exactly in Japan's fintech scene? And given that Tokyo is one of the world's most important financial centers, what's Tokyo doing better than other financial centers in Asia and across the globe?
Yeah, actually, Tokyo is the heart of Japanese fintech scene, the financial scene as well. And the market itself is growing. And Tokyo still has huge population. So yes, Tokyo is the core of the ecosystem. But we have some other international financial cities or fintech cities, such as Osaka and Fukuoka. And the government's trying to diversify the ecosystem and industry. So actually, as a FinTech association, we are trying to support all of these cities, so Tokyo, Osaka, and Fukuoka, to be international financial hubs and FinTech hubs.
Thank you very much for sharing these. And one of the, FinTech has many different areas, no, but one of the FinTech areas which has been thriving more these last few years has been that of digital banking. Digital banking is undoubtedly expanding globally, and the Asia-Pacific region in general has emerged as a hotspot for digital banks. When it comes to Japan, well, Japan actually has a unique landscape regarding internet-only banks, to the point that, if I'm not mistaken, the first internet-only bank in Japan, the Japan Net Bank, was launched as early as in 1995. No, I mean much earlier than this kind of banks in any or in most places of the world. So, given that, keeping that in mind and keeping in mind that we are now seeing this second generation of digital banks in Japan, like Mina Bank, Line Bank, could you please share with my listeners a bit more about the Japan virtual or digital banking scene? Like, what does it look like? And why did Japan start to have those digital banks much before other countries did?
Right. So yeah, let me introduce the history and background of internet-only banks. So in early 90s, we faced so huge economic and financial crisis and collapse. And in mid 90s, some financial institutions and banks were bankrupted. So after that, the government and the industry trying to change the situation and trying to deregulate the banking and financial regulations. So this is a reason why some new kind of financial institutions were established. So internet-only banks and internet-only broker-dealers were established under this situation. That is the first generation of internet or digital banking. But actually, that kind of internet-only banks or financial institutions do not have a kind of interoperability or composability, which second generation fintech companies or challenger banks have. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is a situation, and actually, these first generation financial institutions were established under regular banking regulatory frameworks or regular financial instruments acts. So there is no digital banking regulatory frameworks in Japan.
That's actually something very interesting what you just mentioned, and something that makes Japan quite unique. No, this idea that in Japan you do not have like specific digital banking licenses. And I say it's very interesting because if you compare it, for example, with other places in Asia like Hong Kong, Singapore, where they are creating or they created long ago those specific digital banking licenses, well, you see that in Japan you adopted this different approach, which it's interesting to see these differences.
Mm. Yeah, we don't have a specific digital banking license.
Mm. That's something very interesting to know, and I'm sure my listeners will find it interesting as well. And Well, one of the ways through which innovation is promoted is through sandboxes. I know that in many countries they initially use sandboxes to test whether their digital banks or the digital banking scene would be successful or not. I mean, new technologies are tested in sandboxes as well. And when I introduced you before, I said that you are a vice chair of the FinTech Association of Japan, but I also said that you are a committee member of the government of Japan's regulatory sandbox. So I wanted to ask you a bit more about this sandbox. Like, first of all, do you think that sandboxes are a good solution to promote innovation? And secondly, could you please let my listeners know a bit more about any like specific initiative in which this sandbox is currently working or has worked on these last few years?
Okay, so yeah, Japanese sandbox is taking quite important role in the Japanese society and governance system as well. And unlike other countries or other sandboxes in the fintech scene, such as Hong Kong, Singapore, and UK, Japanese governance system is based on civil law. So that means regulations or governance comes first, and followed by innovation and new businesses. That means fintech companies or startups have to know about what regulation is. So sometimes this works, but from the standpoint of innovation or adapting new technologies, there are so many problems because many things are happening in the frontier, and there's no regulations, there's no rule. So Japanese is actually behind in the innovation field and the technology field. So to change this situation, the government established a regulatory sandbox in Japan. Mm-hmm. And another unique point of Japanese sandbox is it's not designed only for the financial industry. It's for all industries. So we had some projects in healthcare and mobility, because innovation or technology adoption is not only for the financial industry. And there will be some crossover. So that's why the government, Japanese government, established Sandbox under the cabinet office.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I very much agree with this idea that you just mentioned, that technological innovation doesn't need only to be applied to the financial sector. It's of course very important to innovate in finance, but it's well, not less important to innovate in, as you said, healthcare, mobility, and many other industries. So it's really good to see that your sandbox doesn't only focus on finance, which is important, but in more industries. And well, as you know, there is one area about which I've done extensive research, that is central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And I know that the Bank of Japan started last year to test its digital yen, even though the Bank of Japan admitted that it currently has no plan to issue this CBDC. And they started those tests from the viewpoint of ensuring the stability and efficiency of the overall payment and settlement systems in case in case there is a change of circumstances, in case that people cease to use central bank money to the extent that they are doing so today. So my point is that we don't know whether the digital yen will ever be launched or not. That being said, if ever launched eventually someday, some year, what advantages do you think that the digital yen will have for Japan or for the Japanese citizens? And related to that, do you think that Japanese people are largely used to making electronic payments, or do they use cash much more often than in other Asian countries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, Japanese central bank mentioned that CBDC is quite important for the Japanese economy, of course. And one of the biggest advantage of it is universal access to the digital currency or digital financing system. Yeah, they mentioned that. So that's why currently they are focusing on retail CBDC. And last year they started the proof of concept. It was phase 1, and the phase 2 will be started this year. And after that, they are planning to do some prototyping or more, let's see, have more experiments in the market. So this is the situation, CBDC situation in Japan. And actually, in terms of digital payments, Japan is behind, and the cashless payment ratio in Japan is still 30%. So many people are still using payment in cash. So in this context, we have to provide more frictionless payment solutions, and that includes CBDC as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. And now that we discussed payments and of course, now that we're talking about fintech, there is one area as well which is thriving worldwide and also in Japan, and that area is that of cryptocurrencies. Well, in Japan, the crypto space is quite or even very advanced, given, I would say, this early legislative clarity and a proactive regulator being, well, or allowing to Japan to have become like one of the maybe most crypto-friendly countries in Asia, I would say. So can you please explain to my listeners what does the crypto industry, the crypto scene in Japan looks like?
Yeah, crypto scene or crypto industry in Japan is still huge in the Japanese ecosystem. And yeah, as you mentioned, Japanese regulator, JFSA, is very proactive to do some innovation activities in the crypto space. So, firstly, they established crypto regulation, crypto exchanges regulations, and they provide some transparency in the regulation or regulatory frameworks. And also, recently, they established the multi-stakeholder network to discuss governance system in the crypto industry. So these activities are very, I think, proactive, and yeah, the Japanese regulator is doing well, I think. But on the other hand, there are some problems in the industry as well. So regulation itself is a bit strict. And also we have some issues in the taxation. And as I mentioned, the Japanese ecosystem is domestic, but crypto industry is very international. So we have to have more collaborations with international ecosystem and international companies and fintech leaders.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. Yes, I think that some of these issues are global. I mean, we discussed before that before starting to record, that taxation, or maybe the lack of clarity when it comes to taxation, is actually a global issue when it comes to cryptocurrencies. And even in those countries where there is an actual clarity, when you look at how cryptos are treated from a tax perspective, well, you see that maybe their treatment is not as fair as other assets, we could say. So, of course, I mean, taxation when it comes to cryptos is going to be an issue for a while in most countries. And I wanted to ask you as well, like, I mean, you painted a great image of what the crypto industry in Japan looks like nowadays, but how do you foresee the future of the crypto industry in Japan? Do you think it's going to be bright, or do you foresee like problems?
Yes, actually, recently, younger generations coming into the crypto industry in Japan. And these generations more international and more familiar with technology as well. So I have a positive image on the Japanese future crypto industry.
And well, I also read that crypto exchanges in Japan are trying to simplify the process for approving new cryptocurrency listings in an aim to boost the number of cryptos traded in the country, traded in Japan. Why? I mean, was this process maybe before not simple enough, or why is that?
Yeah, it takes a bit long time to be listed on the crypto exchanges in Japan. It's more than half a year. And the number of listed crypto assets and currencies are still limited in Japan. So this is the reason why some crypto exchanges trying to simplify the process. And yeah, and also trying to change the ecosystem or practices as well.
No, actually, I noticed this a while ago, because if you check, for example, the top 30 or 50 crypto exchanges in the world, you will see that those from outside Japan, they normally have like many coins listed, whereas those in Japan that have very big trading volumes and make it to this top 30 or top 50 list, when you check what coins they have listed and they offer to trade, you will see that in most cases they only offer like a few, no, 5, 6, 10 coins, much less than the others, even though when it comes to the trading volume, I mean, the total volume is actually as big as any of the ones which make the top 30, no? But they offer less coins. So I guess it may be because of this, no? Because of being a bit more difficult in Japan to get your cryptos listed in the exchanges.
Yeah, it's due to a bit strict regulation.
Mm-hmm. I see. And well, also about cryptos, well, I know that the major Japanese crypto exchange, Bitbank, conducted an online survey diving into the NFT investment trend in the Japanese cryptocurrency market. This survey was done last year in March, so the outcome, the results may be a bit different, but I guess the general idea still remains there. As per this survey, at least one of each 4 crypto holders in Japan also have an experience with holding NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which is quite a lot. So I wanted to ask you, like, what does the NFT industry look like in Japan?
Right. Yeah, similar to other countries, NFT is booming in Japan. Because, yeah, as you may know, already know, fungible token is basically regulated and non-fungible are not. So many non-financial companies coming to the industry and launching new platforms and new projects and new tokens. So yeah, this is the situation in Japan. And people, consumers also getting know more about the non-fungible tokens. So the market is actually started now.
Mm-hmm. And well, I mean, what about the metaverse? No, because if we said that cryptos are quite used in Japan as well as NFTs, I guess there must be an interest for the metaverse in Japan.
Yeah, metaverse is also booming in Japan. And many companies are establishing a metaverse association. And yes, and many companies trying to lead the industry in Japan. So this is quite on an early stage, but yeah, this is the situation in Japan.
Mm-hmm. And well, before wrapping our conversation up, I just wanted to ask you, like, whether there is any final thoughts or ideas that you would like to share with my listeners before we wrap this up. Anything in particular that you think you need to say before finishing this episode?
Yeah. So again, the Japanese ecosystem is a bit unique and domestic, and information on Japanese fintech scene is limited. So, so I'm very happy to provide more information to the international ecosystem. And if you have any questions or you want to collaborate with Japanese companies and fintech leaders, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that.
Well, thank you very much, Takeshi, for your time today. I mean, this puts an end to our conversation. It's been great. It's been amazing to hear from you regarding your personal journey and regarding fintech in Japan. I mean, as you said, Japan's fintech scene is quite well, unique, different from that in other countries. No, I mean, as you said, maybe it's more domestic than others and not so much international. And you have a very interesting and unique digital banking system. Cryptos are quite well, widespread in Japan as well. So, I mean, overall, it's a very interesting market. It's a very interesting country as well. So it's been great to hear from you. I'm sure that my listeners will have learned a lot from you as well after listening to you. And well, I wish you all the luck, in promoting and trying to even enhance Japan's fintech scene.
Yeah, thank you very much, and keep collaborating.
Thank you very much for coming to my show. And well, to all my listeners, thank you very much for listening to this episode. And please stay tuned for the next ones. See you soon.